Hey Reddit! Before we begin, a quick note. Our channel's been slowing down a bit lately, and the easiest way you can support us is by hitting that subscribe button. It's free, fast, and makes a real difference in helping this community grow. Now, let's dive into the story. The 56th floor of the gleaming black glass skyscraper gleamed in the late morning sun. Floor-to-ceiling windows cast sweeping shadows across a minimalist, high-end conference room. At the head of the table sat Julian Mercer, a man both feared and revered in New York's elite circles. Draped in a sharp navy suit, he radiated authority. A self-made billionaire who rose from nothing to dominate every room he entered. Today's deal would seal the final gap in his vast business empire. He eyed the thick stack of paperwork laid out before him. Pages loaded with precise legal terms and cutthroat strategy. The company he was poised to acquire was modest, old-fashioned, and on its last legs. His advisors called it sentimental clutter in a high-speed market. But Julian saw it differently. A vulnerable target. A perfect acquisition. His attorney leaned in, voice calm but electric with urgency. Mr. Mercer, everything's in order. Just one signature and it's done. Julian flicked open his Mont-Blanc pen and held it just above the dotted line. The room fell into a hush, the kind of stillness that feels like history holding its breath. Around the table, executives leaned forward, some already smirking with satisfaction. Then, a soft creak echoed through the space. A door at the far end swung open. A small woman entered, dressed in a worn, pale blue janitor's outfit. She wheeled in a mop and bucket, clearly out of place among the polished suits and cold steel decor. "I'm so sorry," she murmured, eyes widening. "I didn't realize there was a meeting." An assistant leapt from her seat. "You're not supposed to be in here." But Julian said nothing. His gaze was fixed on the woman. She met his eyes, and in a tone barely above a whisper said, "Don't sign that contract." The tension in the room shifted. Confusion spread. The lawyer stood. "Excuse me, what did you just say?" The woman didn't back down. "Please, sir, don't sign it." Julian's pen froze in midair. Time itself seemed to stall. Slowly, he lowered his hand, his brow tightening. "Who are you?" he asked. The woman took a shaky breath. The silence around her thickened, heavy with disbelief. The room was on edge. No one dared interrupt Julian Mercer, not someone in scuffed sneakers and rubber gloves. But Julian didn't dismiss her. Instead, he leaned back slightly, intrigued. "Go ahead," he said softly. She stepped forward, nerves visible, yet her voice carried a quiet strength, like a story that needed to be told. "I cleaned that building," she said, nodding toward the name printed at the top of the contract. "Every night after the lights go out. I see things others don't. The owners, when they shut things down, they do it together. They leave food out for the overnight crew. They stop to comfort someone who's had a bad day." The lawyer scoffed. "That has no bearing on this transaction." She didn't blink. Her eyes stayed locked on Julian. "They've got an old bulletin board filled with photos, birthdays, retirements, kids graduating. There are sticky notes that say things like, 'You matter.' I know they're not wealthy, but what they've created there, it's rare." Julian's fingers tapped slowly against the table. Her words stirred something dormant in him. A piece of himself dulled by years of deals, dominance, and ambition. "And why does that matter to you?" he asked, tone-guarded. She hesitated before answering. "Because I lost a place like that once. My husband ran a small grocery store. We didn't have much, but we helped people. Then a chain moved in across the street. Took everything." He tried to keep going, but her voice faltered. "He died of a heart attack a month later. We couldn't compete. No one cared. We just disappeared." The room was dead silent. Julian didn't look at her with sympathy, but with something closer to understanding. "This is just business," the lawyer muttered, trying to regain control. But Julian wasn't listening. His eyes moved from the contract to the woman who had stepped into the lion's den to tell him the truth. Her final words lingered like an echo of conscience. Sometimes, the right thing isn't the easy thing. And in that instant, Julian Mercer questioned whether victory had cost him the ability to truly care. He remained still at the head of the table, pen frozen inches above the signature line. The silence stretched, interrupted only by the distant hum of the city outside the tower's glass perimeter. His lawyer leaned in again, his tone low and insistent. "Julian, we're stalling. This is the cleanest deal we've ever seen. You'll double your return in 12 months. Just sign." Julian didn't flinch. His gaze lingered on the paperwork, but his thoughts had drifted elsewhere, to a woman in a worn-out uniform standing quietly at the back of the room. Maria, the janitor who dared to speak truth in a room full of power. And suddenly, he saw someone else, his father. The grease-stained hands. The auto shop that was swallowed by a corporate chain offering cheaper service. He remembered how the pride drained from his father's face. How dinner conversations grew quiet and short. It had been decades since that memory surfaced. Julian's grip on the pen tightened. The boardroom waited, fidgeting with impatience and confusion. But inside Julian, something fundamental was shifting. The deal was perfect on paper. But was it just? He lifted his head. Maria said nothing now. She stood near the door, calm but expectant, her eyes a mix of vulnerability and quiet resolve. She had no official authority. Yet with a single sentence, she disrupted the entire rhythm of a billion-dollar deal. Julian's heart beat loud in his chest. And then, with quiet certainty, he set the pen down. "No," he said. A murmur rolled across the room like a wave. "What do you mean, no?" his CFO demanded. Julian rose from his chair. "I mean, we're not going through with this, not this way. But we're rescuing them from collapse," someone argued. "You'd be turning a profit while giving them a lifeline." Julian shook his head slowly. "No, we'd be stripping away what makes them whole and calling it a strategy. That's not who I want to be anymore." He turned toward Maria. "Thank you," he said, "for reminding me that not everything worth saving can be measured in dollars." The room fell completely still as Julian walked away. Not with another conquest, but with something far more rare, a rediscovered conscience. 3 months passed, and the business world still buzzed about the billionaire who turned down a guaranteed win because of a janitor's plea. But beyond the headlines, something far more meaningful was taking place. Instead of purchasing the company, Julian invited its founders to coffee. Not to pitch, but to listen. He asked about their roots, their dreams, their fears. And for once, he didn't offer to fix them. He offered to support them. Not as an owner, as a partner. Julian invested not just money, but his time, his presence, his humanity. He joined their Monday huddles. He showed up to neighborhood cleanups. He laughed with their interns. He looked people in the eye. And in their modest downtown office, he saw things he had long forgotten. Unforced joy, birthday banners made of paper, a glass jar labeled Kindness Fund on the reception desk. These people weren't small time. They were rich in purpose. And it shook him. One morning, Maria arrived with her usual mop and bucket. But this time, someone from HR was waiting at the door. "Mr. Mercer would like a word," she said kindly. Maria paused, then followed, curious, unsure. She stepped into Julian's office to find him holding a sealed envelope. "I'd like to offer you a new role," he said. "Not in maintenance. As our community advisor. I want you to help us stay connected, to each other and to what matters." Maria blinked in disbelief. "I don't think I'm qualified." "You're exactly what we need," Julian replied with a smile. "You reminded me that business isn't just about balance sheets. It's about people. And the legacy we leave behind isn't in what we take, but in what we choose to give. Maria accepted the offer. That day, a woman once overlooked stepped into a new chapter. One that would quietly transform the culture of a company that had once worshipped only numbers. Julian never returned to the old way of doing business. He built something better. And when asked what changed him, he always gave the same answer. Because someone no one listened to had the courage to speak up. And I finally chose to hear her. Because sometimes, the smallest voice carries the loudest truth. Listen with your heart. Because compassion doesn't just change decisions. It changes lives.